Hey there team, welcome back. Barry Watson here, aka Wild Mountain Man, and of course tenting enthusiast. And today we're going to follow on from our tenting series, our wild camping series that we started, and we're going to focus on a key area, and that is where on earth should you pitch your tent. We're going to look at some things around safety, we're going to look at some things around just comfort, and obviously giving you a great night's sleep and having a phenomenal time wherever you do pitch your tent. So let's go. The first key in terms of being able to find the very best, the ideal camping spot is to prepare well. The last thing you want to do is get out on the trail, be out on the track, and then weather packs in, it gets really cold, you get really tired, then you got to forage around thinking, where on earth should I camp tonight? That's the last thing you want to do. You want to be well prepared. So you're going on to various governmental websites, you're going to the various offices they may have, you're looking at magazines, you're on various Facebook groups, social media, you're finding out as much as you can. Now one of the other things you can also do obviously is go onto a map, look at the contour lines, where are they furthest apart, where are they near perhaps a water source, which is also important. So you're well prepared before you get there as to possible campsites that you may need to avail yourself on well before you get there. You generally find that various countries of the world fall into three categories. The first category is absolutely no wild camping. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you go, there's absolutely zero wild camping. We did the Tour de Mont Blanc a couple of years ago, and Italy is one of those countries. We were going to get a €500 fine if we were caught wild camping. So it made good sense not to wild camp, but to go into refuge instead. The other category is, yes, you can wild camp, you've just got certain restrictions. Here in New Zealand, we have something that's called the Great Walks. Within 500 meters of a campsite or of a hut, you cannot camp, but beyond 500 or more, you can. And so you need to be aware of the places where you can camp and where you can't. So there are some countries, there are some places where, yes, you can, but there's some laws that you need to abide by. And other places, I've heard Norway, where you can literally camp wherever you like. But you've obviously got to do things like, be respectful. Some people ask that you put up your tent that's not visible from the road, so you're sort of hiding away, not sort of blocking the visual landscape, as it were. Obviously you're doing things like leaving no trace. You only take photos, you only leave behind footprints, and you take away memories, all those good things. So you just need to be mindful, be respectful of whatever the country you're in, or whatever your country says of what you can and can't do. The last thing you want to do is get a fine, be that guy or that girl that's bagged on social media, or give everybody of us who love tramping and hiking a bad name. And choosing an ideal campsite, another factor is water. At some point you will definitely need water, either to wash yourself in because you get hot and sweaty. The other thing is that you may need water for dehydrated food. You're going to need it obviously for drinking, so either you're going to have to take a bigger burden on your back and actually carry it with you, or actually find a water source. So in terms of your preparation, when you're looking at the contour lines and the separation of contour lines, try to find a stream, try to find a lake, try to find a river, try to find some good source of water, because if you don't carry it up with you, you're going to need to find a source of it. And it's far easier finding a good fresh source of water rather than have the hassle of carrying it in. If you do find a really good spot by a river, always be conscious though of what the forecast is, especially if rain is forecast, because upriver what could happen is there could come a flood, and that flood could potentially come down at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Your tent could become instantly a submarine, and that's certainly not what you want to happen. So my suggestion is that where the river is, set your tent about 2 meters, roughly about 6 feet above it, and you'll generally find that that should give you enough peace of mind, enough insurance to be able to camp safely and know that your tent isn't suddenly in the middle of the night going to become a ship. Insects, yep, that's right, pesky insects are another influencer in terms of where you will place your tent. Now, why is that? Well, in New Zealand we have something that's called sandflies, and they're a blood-sucking nuisance. They come round and they annoy you, they sort of taint your experience when you're out tenting and wild camping. So if you go by a river or by a lake, you're going to be around their breeding ground, that's where they hang out. And so for me, I'll generally go above 1,000 meters, which is just over 3,000 feet. Why? Because the higher you go, the less likely you are to get them. Their small lungs don't seem to be able to handle that sort of atmospheric pressure, perhaps. But I know in Australia they have midges. I know in other places they have mosquitoes. So find out where they are and don't go there. Another key factor in terms of where you're going to camp is where on earth is it flat. Now that may make perfect sense, but I've found sometimes when you look at a map, the contour lines can be further apart, but actually what you can't see is the vegetation, because the vegetation could be grown up even though the ground is actually flat. It could be that you got a lot of tussock. I remember one time where there was a bit of snow around, we literally had to pile up snow between the tussock to get any form of a flat platform that we could actually pitch our two-person tent in. Where you've got ground that's quite rocky, maybe it's got some branches or it's slightly undulating because of the foliage, at times you're going to have to move some of those stones. You're going to have to move some of the foliage. You're going to have to stomp on some of the grass just to flatten it down a bit more. So sometimes you've just got to make do with what you've got. It's not flat, it's not ideal, it is called flat-ish, with a lot of emphasis on the ish. So you've really just got to make good, turn lemons into lemonade, and do your best that you can. Wind is also a consideration of where you're going to put your tent. You want to have, if you can, a natural barrier between your tent and the wind. That barrier could be an overhang, it could be a rock, it could be that you place your tent on what we call the leeward side of the ridge, so that when the wind comes from the windward side, it's blocked by the ridge and you'll have less wind on the leeward side. Another thing is that when you're placing your tent, you want to make sure that you put the back of the tent, in other words the area that's not the door, towards the wind, because the last thing you want to do is to open up your tent and you get blasted by the wind, or it's just really even more of a nuisance, especially when you're trying to cook and you're trying to get your tent get ready for the night. It's just not helpful, it's not good. To help minimize the effects of wind, some people choose to camp in the forest among the trees, and that can be good at times. However, where there is a lot of wind, my main concern, and one of the reasons I do not camp in the forest or where there's a significant foliage covering above me, is because strong wind can dislodge branches. Now, in a small scale, that branch can come down and damage my tent, and that's not good. But what's worse is when that branch or a bigger branch is dislodged and comes down and squashes me, and that ain't good. And so for those reasons, I do not encourage people to camp in the trees. When it's wet, some people like to be able to camp amongst the trees, and the reason for that is they want to be able to have some form of natural canopy that protects them from the rain, and that's good while it's raining. But what happens when it stops raining? You'll find that the rain will keep dripping down from the trees. In other words, all the branches, all the leaves, all the foliage that's holding the water, over time it'll keep falling down on your tent even though the rain may have stopped. There's another reason why I actually don't like camping among the trees. Speaking of water, one of the things you'll be really conscious of when it is raining or when it is forecast to rain, and that is pooling. What I mean by that is, if you look down here, you can see that it has been raining, and you can also see on the ground there are pools of water. Now, that water is not what you want under your tent. You want to make sure you don't put your tent into any area that's got like a bowl or a dip in it. If anything, you want something that's on a slight slant if it's raining or if it's forecast to rain, so the water can, if it gets under your tent, can literally flow through your tent. Well, under your tent, that is, not through your tent, under your tent, and not pool. And choosing where to spend the night, some people like to strike a bit of a compromise. They like to wild camp, but also they like the comforts of a lodge, a refuge, or a hut. So what they do is they actually wild camp next to a hut, a lodge, a refuge. Then they get the best of both worlds. They get the freedom and somewhat of independence with being in the tent, but also they can hang out with family or friends or others they don't know in the warm shelter of the insides, which gives them the ability to be able to get the best of both worlds. One of the key considerations if you're wild camping in the middle of winter, and that is avalanche. You want to stay as clear from that as you can. You want to make sure that you're kept up to date with the latest avalanche risk and forecast. You want to make sure that you are pitching your tent on the flattest possible platform when there's no steep slope or any chance that the ground is going to come out from underneath you. You want to make sure that in the off chance that there is an avalanche, if you're going into a non-prone area, that there is significant runoff. So anything that's going to come around you is going to not get anywhere near your tent at all. And my suggestion is, if in doubt, don't. If in doubt, do not go out. It's not worth it. Thanks everyone for watching, really appreciate that. If you found it helpful, can I please ask that you subscribe, and that'll keep you in touch with other videos I'm doing in this series that'll help make your wild camping that much more exciting, that much more fun, that much more safe, and that much more memorable. So until I see you again in the next video, stay safe, stay strong, see you later, bye.